Basically an experimental session. I want to try to do a video side offering as part of the open access blogs project, and this is my first session in this format. Basically the idea is to have some sort of video soundtrack as opposed to just a series of written posts. And basically I'm right now doing a video item on the latest blog post, which is basically the rise of strongmen, the search for simpler pleasures, and the contest for soft power. And essentially the blog post is meant to be read. So I'm not trying to read you out or doing things of that type, but I do think that it is important for me to develop a video presentation side of the project, because it will be in parallel, and also because the blog is meant to be educational. So I think that in as much as I plan maybe to do some sort of courses as part of the series of blog posts, I think that I could start doing some sort of a commentary on what's been done, maybe each week, maybe more often than that. So and in this edition of the Substack, essentially I'm dealing with politics, how democracy does under strain, the nationalism internationally, and then the blog post deals with the geopolitics and how that affects the global order by and large. And then of course it leads to the issues of governance, the political legitimacy of local regimes, of country level regimes, and of course the issues of the military rule, how that may play out in different contexts. And once again, the blog posts that I produce do have a geopolitical aspect to them, one way or another, and in this edition likewise deals with soft power and geopolitics and how that interacts, especially in the context of China, such as China's international organization for mediation. Basically, as we see China take more active role internationally, and then we have the issues of US and China frictions, and the issues of the tariff war in between these two countries. So this is something which comes back very often in the newsletters I review, and then we make a transition to the economics, trade wars. Once again, it is one of the major economic issues of these days, and how that affects technological setups both in China and in the US, and that I think should be seen as part of the economic transitions internationally, not only in US or China. And we cover urban metropolises and peripheral capitals. Essentially all this attention to either China or US is actually living outside other countries, other capitals, other centers of economic activity internationally. And in this edition of the blog deals with India's aviation boom, and how that can be approached from the point of view of the environmental issues or concerns. And then we have Lithuania's capital Vilnius, and how this country deals with its countries in the Baltic region, how its urban policies are being reassessed or compared to what is going on in the region and also internationally. And then of course Dubai, which is known internationally as a real estate hotspot, has I guess a very big penthouse sector, as it is, I guess, a major item in the luxury sector. And then, of course, there is probably a very high level of offerings of villas as a distinct item on the real estate menu for the local and I guess international buyers as well. And what we see is that there is a growing maturation of the luxury market in Dubai, which is a note. And then, of course, we proceed to the issues of culture, to the issues of cultural institutions, and the way that those can be seen as agents of power and of resilience, of course, such as in China, for instance. And then we deal with the cultural landscapes which are in flux given the general shifts in global affairs, and that is of course related to collective identities, national economies, and the meaning making that also requires by and large. So, and this essentially leads as well to culture institutions, how these fare in this context as essentially focal points of identity building and resistance on the local level. And we have in Japan Naoshima New Museum of Art, which essentially engages the place, the local context via its architectural approach, and how that connects to the demographic issues on the ground in Japan, which is known to be a demographically a challenged country because of the high age of the population and of the issues it actually brings to the fore in terms of the policy making, etc. And of course, this edition of the newsletter deals with MUBI, which is basically an international platform for art house films. And this platform is launching a publishing arm as part of fostering a discourse around cinema, around high end, or let's say one could say art house, auteur cinema, etc. And then we proceed to social issues which arise out of the migration flows, out of global inequalities, and of the double-edged effects of technological progress by and large. So that we have the issues of the techno-social dilemma as part, I guess, of what AI brings and its advancements, and the risks of that process, and of course how human employees, human decision makers are responding to all that, which is highly interesting, I think. And of course, the related items in the newsletter are climate issues, labor policies, social welfare, and the climate change that is being essentially intensified through the high energy inputs into a lot of technological change and progress initiatives around the world. And then we have the issues, how does Japan as a country deal with heat waves via workplace measures? And this is one of the more, I think, relevant topics in East Asia, anything in Europe internationally increasingly, especially when, let's say, in the United States, if you think about, let's say, very high temperatures in the summer. And then, and this is essentially the next item about summer heat, frugal living and social movements. Essentially, we have a lot of changes which are occurring right now internationally, which do demand, I guess, rethinking how social movements operate, what it means, etc. And then we have the entanglements of technology, labor, and ethical issues around all that. as AI becomes an ascendant factor in many fields of economic activity, and what would the risks of surveillance be as part of that, which is very important, I guess. And then we have automated kitchen activities, or maybe not so much automated as essentially back-end restaurant setups, which essentially operate via online interfaces for the customers, and what it means for the labor relations as it becomes, as these are becoming reconfigured via that. And of course, there is a topic of the intersectionality in art and technology, and how ideas and ideological narratives are being structured around that. Such as, I guess, in China, as it basically eases its control vis-a-vis K-pop culture, and how that essentially shows the soft power winds of South Korea in the region and in China more generally, of course. And then we have nuclear powers, renaissance, as I guess AI energy needs are growing, and as techno-optimists become entangled in the policy, in the politics around energy supplies, international interrelations around that. And of course, this also demands, I guess, in parallel, a rise in attention to social welfare, public health, and human rights. Especially outside of the first world, such as in Africa, specifically Nigeria, where there are significant female health issues, especially around childbirth, are also a hotspot are an issue. And then we have had urban violence in Paris after the soccer team win, which was attracted attention, and essentially these topics are being basically very broadly synthesized in the blog post in terms of how these trends can be integrated. What can we learn from that? And I think the key items which emerge out of that are essentially the issues of the institutional legitimation, and how the issues which connect to that can be addressed via extra legal means. Then we have soft power as opposed to hard real politic issues, which is also a key aspect, I guess, of what is going on around China and I guess around the world as well. Then we have the issue of the globalization of culture, and how that plays out as opposed to local authenticity. And of course, we've got the issues of the technological innovation and social and ecological fallout of that, and how local contexts can be made more resilient against that. And of course, we've got issues of the public health and of the environmental equity internationally, and I think that these are very important by and large. And essentially, the blog posts, or at least in this edition, closes with essentially a statement that the world is actually navigating the uncharted waters around this change, and this is what is emerging out of the new edition of the newsletters. And essentially, I've been looking at the Monocle, at the Semafor and also ArtNews issues from recent days. And there you go.